to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so why don't we move to the roll call, please?
Jackie Nunez.
Here.
Cliff Robbins.
Here.
Rafael Reyes.
Here.
Greg St. Clair.
Present.
And Susan Rowinski, I have not heard whether she is coming.
She is absent. She will not be here.
Oh, she is absent. Thank you.
All right, then let's move on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion we accept the minutes from last month.
Do I have a second?
I was not here.
Then I'll second.
We do not have a majority to approve the minutes because I also was not at the last meeting. So we'll have to approve them, defer them to the next meeting. All right, moving on to new business, sewer lateral cost sharing program report.
Good evening, Chair Reyes and Commissioners. My name is Alonso Barahona. I'm a Management Analyst for the Public Works Department. And this evening, I'll be giving a presentation on the citywide private sewer lateral cost sharing program. This presentation is focused on providing context on how the sewer lateral cost sharing program complements Yeah. There it goes. Okay. So this presentation is focused on providing context on how the sewer lateral cost sharing program complements the clean water program. Also attached in your agenda packet is the administrative report and the annual report for the sewer lateral cost sharing program. So the private sewer lateral ordinance. The city's private sewer lateral ordinance states that the property owner is responsible to repair, replace, and maintain their sewer lateral. And the ordinance details a private sewer lateral is defined as the pipe running from the building to the city sewer main, including the Y connection at the city main. This does include any portion of the pipe that crosses into the public right-of-way and is buried underneath the sidewalk and street. As in the AR, I'll be providing a short history of the sewer lateral cost sharing program. In 2009, the city of San Mateo was issued a cease and desist order and fined by the California Regional Water Quality Control Board for excessive sanitary sewer overflows. As an alternative to paying the entire fine, the Water Board allowed the city to use part of the fine money to fund a cost-sharing program called Healthy Home, to help property owners with a portion of their expenses incurred with repairing or replacing their sewer lateral. The program was a targeted effort to focus on neighborhoods with the leakiest laterals. In 2013, the City Council approved the implementation of a citywide private sewer lateral cost-sharing program, where property owners participating in the program would have to replace their full sewer lateral, and the city would provide a 50% reimbursement up to a maximum $5,000. In 2018, staff informed the Commission on additional sewer lateral enhancements that would be implemented in order to make efficiencies to the program. These enhancements included a 3-month timeframe for property owners to complete program guidelines before their application is voided, a waiting list, and informing property owners through mailers on clean water or capital improvement projects that will impact their streets. So how does the sewer lateral program address the impacts of the wastewater system? On your left, you'll see an image of inflow and infiltration. Broken or leaking laterals results in inflow and infiltration, which affects the wastewater system's conveyance and treatment abilities. During the wet weather season, excess runoff can infiltrate deficient laterals and flow to the wastewater treatment plant. The excess of water and sewage into the wastewater system can cause sanitary sewer overflows, which negatively impact the stormwater system and water quality in the city's creeks and lagoons. On the right, you will see an image of exfiltration. Exfiltration of sewage from deficient laterals also contributes to environmental concerns that can contaminate the soil. So how does the sewer lateral program complement the clean water program? The clean water program goals are to replace aging infrastructure and facilities, build wet weather sewer system capacity assurance to prevent overflows, meet current and future regulatory requirements, align with the City of San Mateo and Foster City's sustainability goals. Deficient sewer laterals contribute to the total million gallons a day treated by our wastewater system and increase the risk of sanitary sewer overflows. The citywide sewer lateral cost-sharing program is another tool in the toolbox to support the Clean Water Program goals and the City Council's priority to replace deficient laterals. Private sewer laterals replaced per fiscal year. The following figure shows the impact the city has contributed to through the total number of sewer laterals replaced in the past 4 fiscal years. This figure also shows the current number of laterals replaced in the current fiscal year. The current average reimbursement to property owners is $4,300. At this point, I conclude my presentation, and I am open to any questions you may have.
Yeah, I do. Thank you for your report. One of the biggest things I have a concern about is when you have a lot of the sewer laterals over the years from different cities, different costs, different things. Usually the ground, and again, I've replaced probably 100 sewer laterals doing construction and stuff like that. Matter of fact, I worked for a company one time that I did that for about 2 years. You get, most of the time, you're hard packed because we don't have sand, soil. So if you have something broken, the ground itself around it is like clay. And if any bad products are around it, that stuff turns really hard because of detergent, grease, oil from foods and stuff like that. And it makes it just like a brick. So you don't really have as much seeping out, or you have more seeping in, water and stuff like that. With our sewer treatment plant and our sewer treatment tax on the citizens, where are we going to be able to look at it, because we're going to be pulling so much money in from them, that we can maybe help more persons if we can, if there's more requests, instead of, do we have a deadline that says you meet this and then the rest of people go on a waiting list right now?
So in past fiscal years, the budget for the sewer lateral cost sharing program, and we can go back. As you can see from 15-16 and 16-17, the average was $500,000 budgeted for the fiscal year. 17-18 was $640,000, just because we did a pilot program with the Clean Water Program to replace sewer laterals in the Shasta-Glendora project area. But during 18-19 and 19-20 fiscal years, City Council adopted that in order an increase in the budget for the sewer lateral cost sharing program. So we were able to get more property owners into the program. The 3-month time frame is pretty sufficient for property owners to get their laterals fixed, and if they don't, then their application will be voided, and that also gives other property owners the ability to replace their laterals if they're on a waiting list. Luckily, this time around, there were enough people on the waiting list that everybody on the waiting list was able to participate in the program and get their sewer lateral replaced.
Do we have a standing amount that averages on the waiting list for people? Or is it going to be that much different that we go back to City Council and said, if we got 50 extra people a year, do we keep asking for the increase? Is that what would be the better way to look at it if we have a continued waiting list.
Yeah, I think we've been able to manage the waiting list. As you can see from the chart that's up on the screen there, we have never exceeded the budget amount yet. So I think the more critical thing, and we made a change, Alonzo had stated, is the 3-month issue, because we had people that would get their application in and then just wait it out, and we'd never have them actually do that. So I think we had a bigger problem in the past, actually probably turning people away or having the waiting list not being able to move up into the fundable part, because people were just basically holding on to that money.
They were holding on until the approval and dilly-dallying?
Yeah, so that's why the 3-month came up. So now I don't believe we have the near the issue of the waiting list. And I think, like Alonzo said, we were able to get to the entire waiting list last year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alonzo. Particularly this slide that you have up, I want to ask about the delta, the difference between the budgeted amount in the program and the reimbursed total. Is that carried forward, or what happens? Does that just go back into the budget? And
I believe that funding goes back into the budget, the overall budget for the sewer fund.
for Public Works, for the sewer fund generally, can be used and is used for others? I'm going to look at Brad on that.
Yeah, it just is part of the fund balance. It returns to the fund balance and gets reallocated potentially in the next year. So, or pays for capital or whatever, we have going on.
Would there be, I don't know, I have to think a moment to put it, but curious what staff's position would be on, it seemed logically, if this program is supposed to incent people, it's a subsidy, right? So we're trying to get people to do this. And I know later we're going to talk about the changes to the program, to a different part of the program. Mm-hmm. But I think I saw a mention that where that is expected to have a 2% per year. This is a 1%, so it's not huge. We're looking to get more. Would there be some value to carry forwards of the delta, so you actually have a bigger pot? Maybe you're doing that behind the scenes. I don't know.
Well, since this is operating budget, we don't normally carry over operating items in the budget. Capital we do, but since this is operating, we don't normally do that.
Okay.
And again, I don't see us exceeding or reaching our limit yet. So I think, like council had us asked us to increase the amount, and so we've done that, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll keep monitoring that. If there's a need to add to the to that annual budget amount, that's what we'd probably prefer to do. And then just because of the financial aspects and the way the city does business, it's just not a practice we want to have, is carry over operating monies.
Does council just come up with this number each year?
We actually recommended the number. The 500,000 was the original amount that was put into place when the program was first started, and then we noticed we were pushing up against the limit, and so we council had an interest in doing more sewer laterals, so we asked for the $250,000 increase for 18, 19, 19, 20.
Okay, thank you. That's it on this piece for me.
Thank you, Alonzo. Just wondering, does the city know how many sewer laterals, the estimate number that need to be updated?
No, but based on what in the next presentation, we have what we calculated is possibly a 50% deficiency rate. So we have around 28,000 laterals in the city. So we're looking at somewhere around 14,000 that possibly might need to be repaired or replaced.
Okay, got it. That answers a follow-up question that I had on the next presentation, so thank you. A quick question on the number of the total sewer laterals replaced on this side for 2018 and 2019. It says 155, and I'm just wondering what the discrepancy is between that and in the report, which says 139 completed the program in the 2018-2019 fiscal year. I'm just wondering what the delta is for that. It's on page 11 at the bottom. It says, of the 186 participants, 139 completed the program. And then on the slide, it just says 155. So I'm just wondering what the difference is.
I believe the difference would be, see, when we add the 18 additional participants that were included in the program, that I believe that that might come up closer to that 155 number.
Okay, just wondering on that. And then of the 25% of the participants that didn't complete, was it because of the reason that was just mentioned, that Brad just mentioned around applicants were just holding their place?
It's a combination of the property owners aren't able to get it done within those 3 months. Other times it can be life situations that come up for those property owners where they're no longer able to participate in the program. And at that point, they would let us know that they would want to void their application.
And then they would just have to apply the following year if they were not able to complete it within the 3 months?
They can always apply the next following year. Yeah.
Okay. Have we considered, I know that a lot of discussions may have gone around into the 3-month time period, and I know it's only 25%, but is there room to change that potentially in the future? Or if applicants needed more applicants needed more time, given that there's going to be projected large increase in the number of applicants for this in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely flexible with property owners. If property owners need time due to circumstances that were beyond their control, we take that on a case-by-case basis to see if we can extend their time when their due date is.
And I'm just wondering, are there a lot of homeowners or applicants that need a little bit more assistance in putting the documentation together, and how does the city kind of go about that?
Most of the time, property owners are, there's not much of assistance, that they need much assistance. I think maybe 1 or 2 throughout the fiscal year would need a little bit more help. And at that time, we would, what we do is we hold an appointment, and then we'll have that person come in, and then we'll go through all the documentations with them and how to proceed for the program. And then we'll check in with them to make sure that they go through the process and they're able to get the reimbursement.
Great. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alonso, for your work here. One of the things I'm struggling with, and I sent some questions in advance, is that neither the annual report nor the staff report actually characterize the problem. So can you characterize the problem? Is this primarily, as I understand it, a problem of infiltration? It's not primarily a problem of exfiltration, although we had the lawsuit would suggest that it was an exfiltration problem. I'm a little bit unclear on what is the root problem that we're trying to solve, and how big is that problem, and where is it coming from? So if you could provide the big picture here about what exactly is that issue here that we're trying to solve.
The issue that we're trying to solve is to prevent sanitary sewer overflows, and the contribution of leaking laterals to the collection system can cause issues down the line for the treatment of wastewater. That's one of the big issues. And of course, there's inflow, infiltration, exfiltration, which can, inflow infiltration, which I just discussed regarding the sanitary sewer overflows. Exfiltration is more an environmental concern where the soil gets contaminated, and we're just trying to reduce that.
Sure, I understand that. So, so that I'm assuming that fine was in 2014, more or less, 2013?
2009.
2009. And how many incidents of sewer overflows have we been having?
It varies based on, the rain we get annually.
Sure.
The last couple of years have been actually fairly light. I think probably less than 10. Less than 3 we've had last year. So and one of the things we've also done is the Delaware area near 25th is where we get a lot of overflows. And so we have some tanks that we put in there that actually bleed off some of the potential overflow. And you can see them there on the west side of Delaware between the tracks and Delaware. So that's helped actually reduce some of the overflows we might get if the rain is just right. Obviously, with some of the heavier rains, that doesn't suffice to take care of it. But we've been seeing a decline in the number of overflows over the last few years, so that's a good thing. But again, it's weather related.
Sure, of course, and we've had the drought. So, well, the last year was a big year. So, what would be really helpful in a report like this would be to actually plot that out year by year. Where are we? And maybe with a rainfall superimposed, amount of rainfall and number of incidents. That actually would tell us, are we actually improving? That's a useful metric in terms of net result. So that would be one. And then do we have a metric around exfiltration that the relevant agencies here, I'm not remembering, that suit us on, is actually monitoring? So what's the metric associated with exfiltration that we are actually monitoring for?
Sure, if I can note one thing, the issue of exfiltration actually doesn't occur. It really depends on the groundwater levels, and the groundwater levels have been rather high. So the issue that we do encounter is water coming into the system and not actually exfiltrating.
Okay.
That's primarily,
which was the point made earlier. Okay, so that's understandable. Though I'm a little bit unclear of the lawsuit, how the lawsuit then relates to that. So was the lawsuit primarily about the sewer overflows issue?
Yeah, it wasn't actually a lawsuit. It was a
or a fine. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a citation, basically, if you will,
thank you.
from the water board because of the excessive overflows.
Right.
And the Crystal Springs Sanitary Sewer District and Town of Hillsborough was part of that as well. And that order that required us all to eliminate overflows.
Okay. Would it be possible from this point forward on these annual reports to include the metric of sewage overflows and with a superimposition of maybe, inches of rainfall, something on that order that actually gives us a sense of, are we improving? What's the major metric that we're trying to improve on?
So I'm not sure that would be part of this report because this is really, that actually deals with the overall program that we're doing, right? So as we replace, we do spot repairs within the collection system and so forth. That's more of a metric that would be for the overall program rather than just the sewer laterals. Obviously, this is part of that as well.
Sure.
So we could look into putting something on the website or something on the Clean Water Program.
Okay.
We'll look at
Or
that.
maybe it could be included in the staff report, even if it's not in the formal annual report. I think then that tells us something material about the net result. Earlier, Alonso, you mentioned this 14,000 laterals might need to be replaced. How did we generate that number?
Well, we really don't know how many laterals might need to be replaced. The 50% deficiency rate is what we think would be the rate of deficiency that might be here at the city.
So it's a matter of professional judgment.
Yeah, professional. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So that's fair enough. So then I would note that the numbers are it's great that we're getting this participation, but it's quite a long way right from 14,000. And at the same time, we're seeing only a fraction of the total available dollars in participation, and so I'm just wondering, is the gap solely because of this 25% not completing, or is it that we are not getting enough applications to fill up the available budget? It's not clear to me.
Well, this program runs on a fiscal year, so we're kind of maintained with the budget for that fiscal year, and we do get overly subscribed, but again, property owners may decide not to participate in the program, or they're not able to complete the program, or they choose to rescind their applications. So based upon this program, I think the average is somewhere around a 20%, where we always see each fiscal year that there is no completion of the completion of participants of not completing in the program is around 20%.
Okay, so I think I understand now. What you're saying is we always get applications up to the budget, and then there's a shortfall because of lack of follow-through.
Yes.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah. And we also send out notices, mailers to property owners who are also impacted through the Clean Water Program and the Capital Improvements Program to notify property owners who are going to be impacted on those streets as a courtesy notice that they look at their sewer laterals to see if they can repair or replace them.
Mm-hmm. So then that leads to a couple other questions that I had sent in advance. What do we know about where the bulk of the problem is coming from? Building classes, geography, the sewer overflows probably point to specific geographies, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's a bit challenging to know exactly because every situation is different. Sometimes the laterals are damaged from a tree that's in the resident's yard. Groundwater levels are different, so we get different groundwater levels at different locations in town as well. So it's just hard to say where exactly we're getting the bulk of things, especially in the laterals. We have done some flow monitoring within the collection system, so we have an idea of some of the areas that might be more impacted. So our guess is maybe those areas would have lateral problems as well. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to exactly pinpoint some of that without kind of a tighter analysis or flow monitoring, which is costly and really doesn't get us much bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm. And I can understand that. Where I'm headed though is there a logic to targeting older neighborhoods where for sure there are a lot of really old laterals, and where maybe it's very likely that a significant percentage of the problem is coming from a subset of the overall picture, right? And if we were to concentrate on, let's say, old neighborhoods that we know the laterals are, old clay pipes, then maybe we might actually solve more of the problem by concentrating our attention in particular areas. And it looks like, Greg, you have a comment here.
It's almost impossible to do it's a nice analyzation, but you can go up and down the peninsula. And it's more the cities or towns that you'll go up on certain streets. Like Burlingame's had so much problem because they have certain blocks where they had just huge trees, massive trees. And the trees, every one of those homes during selling of those homes over the years would have to have a sewer problem, because as soon as you dig them up, they're all cracked. The only thing keeping them there is a hard clay soil. We have the same kind of situation where if you get down certain parts around town, the ground is clay, it's hard. Even if the pipe is cracked and disintegrating, it still maintains the pipe form. Mm-hmm. But even back in the early 60s, they started making a wonder sewer lateral pipe instead of the old clay sectional pipes, and they made it, and it was made of cardboard. And almost 20 years to the date, they all started collapsing. So if you could determine who the builder built and where that was, you could maybe determine it with a lot more tree growth, because tree roots go for the smell in the pipe, not the water. And that's what make them crack the pipes if there's a crack. So it's hard to determine them. You're not really going to have a set format unless you can say, oh, we've had 10 on this block and the block's 4 blocks long and we see a ton of trees. I used to work on the street department, so we had to have all the sewer cleaning and the broken pipes, and you'd see the houses that had more and more problems with debris and rock and stuff in there.
If I may, this program is really more voluntary versus targeting, and it's working that way right now. It is fairly costly for someone to replace our laterals, so we don't get everybody we'd like, probably. And I think Alonzo did make the point that we've recently started reaching out to, like, when we're paving a street, that neighborhood, and letting them know about the program, because we're trying to let more people know about it as well, right? And because ideally it'd be nice to fix those before the street gets repaved, and that way we're not digging up the street, shortly thereafter with lateral issues. So we're doing our best to try to get the word out. And again, it's really not a targeted aspect right now, this program.
I understand that. It's still, there are a lot of problems that have a lot of variables like this, and usually probabilistic analysis can narrow down, if you really want to solve the problem, where to target. And I'm a little bit concerned that we're not, taking a proactive approach in terms of the strategy to deal with the problem. I mean, I understand that this is voluntary and we're only covering a percentage of the cost, but if we're more targeted, we will probably be substantially more effective.
Let me add one more thing. Being living in Festa Gardens and seeing and working over the years for the city of San Mateo, most of the majority of problems were on Alameda de las Plugas, where the hills come down and meet the other pipes for the volume when it was raining, and on Delaware down by the fairgrounds. And now that, like Brad said, that's been changed and that other pipes gone in, you don't see the manhole bubbling up like it used to do all the time. And the only concern is, at what extent do we continue to have it once we get the new giant tank in and stuff? That'll really mandate whether we have the problem in certain areas at all.
Okay, well, I don't want to belabor the issue. I did have a couple questions sent to me by Commissioner Rowinski. She obviously wasn't able to participate. So let me just scan these. Let's see, we talked about the participation rate, so I think we covered that. There apparently was a reduction in total footage between 2018, 2019, and 2017, 2018. Can you comment on that? I guess that really just depends on who showed up, so to speak, but if you could verify that.
So I believe Commissioner Rowinski, her question was why the reduction of total footage of 21% between 2018-19 versus 2017-18.
Right.
And one of the things when property owners are working with plumbers or contractors, when they get their final invoice and they pay the final invoice, that's pretty much, they're gone. And sometimes they do put in that information of what the total linear feet that they actually were able to replace, and sometimes they don't. So then the property owner would have to be the one who would have to get that information for the plumber or contractor, because that is one of the things that we look in the reimbursement form. I think staff doesn't want to hold property owners from receiving their reimbursement just because we're waiting on a total number of feet completed. Therefore, I think the decrease in footage was because of not many property owners putting in that information.
Okay. And there are a couple more questions for the next section, so I think we'll, if there are no more questions or comments, move on to the next item. Oh, yes, of course, thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
So move on to agenda item number 3, revisions to the sewer lateral ordinance.
So for my second presentation, I'll be presenting on the proposed revisions to the private sewer lateral ordinance. And you might remember this slide from the previous presentation, but I just wanted to reiterate that the private sewer lateral ordinance property owners are responsible for repair, replacement, and maintenance of their sewer lateral. The current ordinance is broad. By supplementing the ordinance, the city can promote more frequent identification of deficient private sewer laterals. So why update the ordinance now? A supplemented sewer lateral ordinance will help achieve city goals to prevent sanitary sewer overflows and reduce inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewer system. That approach includes sewer system capacity and flow management improvements coupled with sewer collection system rehabilitation and reducing inflow and infiltration. Supplementing the city's private sewer lateral ordinance to include more in-depth requirements for inspections and subsequent repair or replacement will increase the detection of deficient sewer laterals. As deficient laterals are identified and repaired or replaced, the city's investment in upgrading the sanitary sewer system will be better protected. As mentioned in my previous presentation, a supplemented private sewer lateral ordinance is one manner or tool in the toolbox to address inflow and infiltration from private sewer laterals and aligns with the city council priority to identify ways to expedite the replacement of deficient private sewer laterals. Reducing inflow and infiltration from sewer laterals will have other benefits such as maintaining the integrity of public roadways and not undermining construction and paving efforts of the city's pavement management program. So what has happened since the last Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission presentation? Staff conducted 2 community outreach meetings to raise awareness regarding the proposals for a potential revision to the private sewer lateral ordinance. Staff created 3 large posters that provided room to explain the benefits and issues of each potential ordinance update option. Public Works sought the opinions of property owners on 3 new proposed options. A total of 15 participants attended the meetings. Participants favored the combination option of the title transfer and mandatory sewer lateral inspection more than them being separate options. City Council input. Staff presented the following 3 options to the City Council during a study session. Option 1, title transfer. Option 2, mandatory sewer lateral inspection. Option 3, title transfer and mandatory sewer lateral inspection. City Council recommended drafting a proposed revision to the private sewer lateral ordinance based on option 3. Logistics on revising the sewer lateral ordinance. Public Works staff met with various departments and divisions to develop the revision of the sewer lateral ordinance. Staff reviewed different logistical components on how the ordinance can impact property owners and city staff. These logistics included refinement of sewer lateral inspection triggers, calculating the inspection triggers, software implementation for tracking. Staff is currently developing the administrative regulations on how to implement the revised sewer lateral ordinance language. So what is the proposed revision to the private sewer lateral ordinance? The full language is provided as attachment 1 in the Commissioner's agenda packet, but in summary, the owners of the property served by a private sewer lateral shall be responsible for inspecting and testing the lateral if any of the following conditions apply. Title transfer only when there is a sale of a property, before issuance of a building permit for a remodel, alteration, addition, or demolition totaling over the cost of $90,000. Based on input from the Commission, staff reevaluated some triggers. Staff evaluated an over 50% square footage calculation for remodels, but that proved to be too difficult to calculate and could be complicated to interpret. The Community Development Department also agreed that the calculation would be difficult to implement. Staff instead took the average project valuation of property owners who pull building permits for remodels, alterations, additions, or demolition. Staff anticipates that by combining the triggers into one calculation, property owners would have a clear understanding of the requirements of having a sewer lateral inspection conducted, then trying to anticipate which of the three instances where would a sewer lateral inspection be warranted. This calculation is similar with how the City of San Carlos establishes a project valuation minimum where a sewer lateral inspection will be needed. Staff believes that the calculation would minimize misinterpretations of the ordinance requirements. Sewer lateral backup or blockage resulting in a private sewer lateral overflow. Environmental compliance already enforces sewer lateral backups and overflows, but under the proposed revision, it will require a sewer lateral inspection to determine the actual cause of the backup and whether the lateral needs to be repaired or replaced. Change in the sewer customer class. An example is when a building was once an office and now is a grocery store. In this instance, the sewer class changed and a sewer lateral inspection would be needed. From our collaborative process, 2 other additions to the ordinance language were included that detail the frequency of sewer lateral inspections. If a property owner completes a sewer lateral inspection and only minor repairs were conducted, they are not subject to another sewer lateral inspection until after 5 years. If a property owner replaces their full sewer lateral, they are not subject to another sewer lateral inspection until after 25 years, which aligns with the research conducted with several other agencies. Budget impact. This table reflects the addition of staff time needed to maintain current level of service. The calculation for the estimated staff hours is based on the total number of permits. Staff further calculated based on a 50% sewer lateral deficiency rate, which approximates to 426 laterals replaced per fiscal year, in order to achieve estimated staff hours, number of FTE, and their associated impact to the budget. The 3 positions that the revised sewer lateral ordinance would impact are an administrative technician, construction inspector, and a development review technician. The costs associated with additional FTEs have not been budgeted. Staff will be requesting additional FTE for this program as part of the 2020 through 2022 budget process. Next steps. Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission recommends the proposed revisions to the private sewer lateral ordinance to City Council. The revised private sewer lateral ordinance is introduced to City Council. Adoption of the revised private sewer lateral ordinance. And departments finalize administrative regulations for the implementation of the revised ordinance. This concludes my presentation, and I am open for questions.
Okay, with that, why don't we go to Commissioner questions, please?
Thanks, Alonso. I think this is really important given the projections of growth for our city and population, and it's really great that the city is taking a proactive approach to this. Also with extreme variations in weather and precipitation patterns with climate change, it's really great that we're seeing this now as opposed to in the future. So given that the numbers for the replacement will increase quite significantly from around 180 to 426, what additional outreach will be done for this to accommodate that change?
Yeah, the outreach process is still being worked on. I think we'll be doing an outreach to our realtor community, property owners through various social media once this ordinance is in place. But at this point, it's very early in the process for us to determine what the big outreach process would be.
Sure. And has the city done any outreach around this issue in other languages in the past? I'm just curious.
Not sure. I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. I think given the increase from 180 to 426 within every fiscal year, I would recommend having other options and other languages available for the outreach, considering the language needs of our community. Do we need to have a vote for proposing or to recommending the ordinance to council? Okay. That concludes my questions.
Thanks again, Alonso. I appreciate the presentation. I'm generally comfortable with the triggers and the exceptions. We looked at them all in December of last year, and they comport with what I'm aware of some other cities, not only here, but around the state, where I've run into this. A couple questions, though, on the triggers as you spelled out here. And I printed this out, and I probably screwed up. And my copy of the proposed ordinance is only one page. I don't know if there was a second page that I may answer some of my questions, so I apologize. But one of the triggers is a backup in a private sewer lateral overflow. My question is, how are you going to determine that? Because it happens up and down my street. I've had it, and I know we're being taped. I'm not confessing anything, and I will deny it later. But no, I mean, we've had it, and what happens is, the result is in your house or flowing somewhere. You see it. You have people come out and check it, and they either repair or replace or tell you. Usually, it's roots, and they can run the rooter through. The city's not necessarily going to be aware. In my neighborhood, it happens that a lot of these laterals are out the back and go to an alley, so there isn't even if you had roving inspectors. So I'm just wondering how practical that third bullet point item is, or it's C, 1C in the actual ordinance proposed.
Yes, and in regards to regulatory compliance and when usually property owners, when they have a sewer lateral backup, they tend to call the Public Works general line to see what the issue is. And if there is through that conversation, usually our crew would go out there and to take a look. But at the same time, our environmental compliance would also be notified in order for them to look, because you have sewage that's contaminating the soil. But yeah, the total number of cases that they usually see for private property is around 37. So that tends to average around 13 per year. So it's not a big amount, but I know that regulatory compliance really wants to looking at commercial properties where the biggest backups that happen are with restaurants. So, and thus usually that happens from grease traps. So they really want to make sure that they have more enforcement in order to get not only to deal with the issue, but also for the property owner to repair or replace those laterals that are dysfunctional.
I
If I may,
appreciate that.
it's not a large number, but it's just another tool in the toolbox. And so, unless you're calling and telling on yourself, that we wouldn't know. But we do get calls occasionally, and especially like Alonso said, in the commercial areas where we're a little more concerned about it as well.
Fair enough. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that is going to be administratively difficult to police, but if it generates some business, if you will, that's good. The next one, and I did not take the time to dig around and find the cross-reference to 3.54.020 of the code, but this is the change of customer class. And I was curious if you could elaborate. I know you said something about in the presentation changing from a grocery to something else or vice versa. I don't know how often this happens and what actually is involved. Do you know?
Yes, so throughout the fiscal year, we tend to get reports from Cal Water, and we would go through those reports and see which the differences between commercial properties and if it's changed ownership or title of the property. And from there, we're able to figure out what those changes were from the previous fiscal year in comparison to this fiscal year. And in there, if there is a change in class, such as Class A being residential, Class B being standard, kind of like standard water usage, which is more in line with offices, and Class C and D are more in line with small bakeries or heavy water users such as laundromats. So if we see we see those changes, then we would request those properties to have a sewer lateral inspection.
Okay, yeah, I'm guessing that isn't a real common occurrence either, but it's useful. If somebody is converting their office space into a laundry, that would be a different use, or vice versa. But lastly, just the economics, and again, this is where I'm missing my last page, and I apologize, but I mean, there's a cost involved with inspecting and testing. I don't know if that, in the public outreach, if that was noted, because if people are going to support this, they need to be aware that when they sell their property, they've got to do that. But what I'm also assuming, because that's not outrageous, but I'm assuming that if the result is a repair is recommended or a replacement is recommended, then they have to do it, right? That's where my ordinance stops. But isn't that the case, that if the inspection says, hey, this thing's busted, you need to replace?
Yeah, what would happen is if a repair or a replacement is warranted, then the property owner does have to do it. Mm-hmm. When that is brought to our attention, at that point in time, we would put a hold on the parcel. So even if the property owner does not make that fix, if the property owner comes back to pull a building permit, then at that point in time, we would flag that property owner and let them know that in addition to what they're trying to do, that they would have to do a sewer lateral inspection or replace their sewer lateral in this case.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I actually think that's the right path. I do think when we do public outreach, some numbers probably ought to go there, because I actually have a little personal experience in this, and I think a lot of citizens are going to be surprised if they find out that when they're pulling a permit that they've got a $8,000 to $15,000 repair bill on top of it. And I think it's appropriate because we have a problem that needs to be fixed. That's the right time to check these things, but it'd be good if people actually were aware of that. And my last question is, if we're still going to have the subsidy program, so I'm guessing that this would be an appropriate time to let people know about the subsidy program if it's still available, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Property owners, if through a sewer lateral inspection, need to get their sewer lateral repair or replaced, or most likely replaced, then the cost sharing program is always there for them to apply and be part of. And we believe that we would possibly give them some kind of a flyer or something that would say, check out this website, where they can get more information about that.
Excellent. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you for your report again. Two things. I've seen unscrupulous contractors, like almost in the same aspect as I've seen little old ladies that would have a guy go up on the roof and give them a $5,000 bill for roof repair, and the next guy go up and give them a $500 bill for the same roof. I've seen sewer lateral guys go down and break pipes as they're checking the pipe, and then so they got to be able to put it in themselves. I know that the Board of Realtors in a lot of towns have argued for years on, is it worthwhile to have a point of sale ordinance Is it worthwhile? Does it really benefit? And I have to agree with that somewhat myself. It's nice in a perfect world to say, hold it, we got it. But if we're just spending $1 billion on a new sewer treatment tank and storage and stuff, what is the need for this other than overkill? Because and the reason I say that is we've had planning commissioners step up and argue about the big tank. We've had council members argue it's not the big tank needed if we fix the sewer laterals. So now we put the big tank and all the taxpayers are having to pay this huge increase in their tax bills, and they're all arguing about it. And then you turn around and say, okay, and now we still want you to fix the sewer lateral to have a perfect world, even though if we're going to put the other thing in, it takes away the problem.
Sure, if I can address that. The Clean Water Program, well, first I'll back up and say that it is indeed a huge endeavor, right, to take a look at wet weather flows and to manage them. The Clean Water Program has taken an approach that is multifaceted, so it is not just about upgrading and improving the treatment plant, but also improving the collection system. And the 28,000 laterals that we do have that are private are part of that, of those assets that need to be improved. We will not solve the problem by fixing laterals that are not owned by the city. It's 28,000 of them, and as you noted, things break, soils move, groundwater levels change. These are ongoing problems, and what we do is we have an annual program where we inspect and repair our mains. So it is the same approach. The other thing I will note is that the Clean Water Program is designing the facility for a 5-year, 6-hour storm. And anything above that, we will have conditions with, overflows, and we are having a changing climate. So everything that we can do will just put us in a more sustainable situation to be able to handle more frequent and larger storms. So it is just part of the multifaceted approach that the program has been designed around. But relying on laterals will not solve the problem in itself.
I understand in a perfect world, we'd like to have no one sewer lateral be able to have any water in it. If we put in a giant 4 billion million gallon tank and we get the overflow, we stop the overflow, but then we're still going to go after citizens selling their house or doing stuff to pay this additional cost and make it perfect, where we've had the problem going on forever. If we fix the problem that we don't have the overflow in the street and the water bubbling up and we're not being penalized by the state or the clean water boards when we get the big tank in, this is overkill, in my opinion, and it's a perfect world. It's like we'd love to have it, but we'd love to have other things if we have the cost. And can we just say we keep spending the cost or charging people and just keep figuring out a way to charge people cost? Because, we're going to start seeing people complain more and more and more. And the Board of Realtors, I've been at meetings where they've stood up and argued at cities, and cities said no and cities said yes, like Pacifica. But it's been an arguing point that they've said it's not proven to be right. And if we fix it with the giant tank, I don't see why we're having the overkill. And I go by, our council member Bonilla and Commissioner Ebnetter from the planning, who agreed the same thing. If we're fixing it, we do one or the other. So that was my concern. Thank you.
I have some additional questions here. It's not clear to me from the materials we received if the proposal at title transfer is to the seller or to the buyer.
The buyer or seller would negotiate who would be who would be the person to do the sewer lateral inspection and get it replaced?
I see. So, in a real estate transaction, obviously the timing is often very sensitive, and so flexibility there would be important. If it's on the buyer, then presumably there's some flexibility in the time frame that we're talking about when this would have to be executed. So can you speak to what we're talking about there? Because again, I'm not sure I saw that in the materials that we got.
Well, during that transaction, there's also various other inspections that are occurring. So this would just be another inspection that would be added throughout that process.
Okay, so what we're saying then is that inspection would need to happen as part of the transaction. So that a completed inspection would be required for the transaction to execute.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and
Yeah.
Commissioner St. Clair, you had a follow-up comment here.
As a Realtor, in most cities that have the ordinance, the homeowner who is going to be selling the house knows the ordinance is coming about, and they hire a company to come do the test and work it out before they open it up for bid, so it's not a negotiation unknown thing. So when they find it, if there's a problem, they have that cost. Now, it's depending on positioning. If you got a house that someone really wants, the homeowner can say, hey, take it the way it is, have a nice day. Or the seller says, hold it, I'll pay for it. And if I have to close quick, I'll leave the money in escrow to handle the cost. That's a normal transaction.
That makes sense.
There have been other occasions also where property owners purchase a home, and then later on, 3 months down the line, they just realize that they have a broken sewer lateral. And we get those
Sure.
type of situations a lot, especially when we're in the sewer lateral cost sharing program.
Yeah, from the standpoint of disclosures, I'm also I'm sympathetic to this from a buyer protection standpoint. My concern here is the inspection is done, and it then becomes apparent that a repair is required. So where is the burden and what is the timing of that repair requirement? Does it can the seller say, okay, we discovered that a repair is required, we want to execute the transaction and we'll figure out the cost share or whatever, but the buyer then takes care of it afterwards based on whatever the financial arrangement they've negotiated?
Yeah. So
Or are we saying that the repair actually has to happen before the transaction is completed?
no, because what will happen is that the sewer lateral inspection would occur. The city would be providing a sewer lateral inspection report. That report would have to get turned into the city, and if it is deemed that the sewer lateral would need to be repaired or replaced, then we would put a hold on the property. So then the next time, whether it gets replaced, whenever that property owner, either it be the buyer or seller, comes to the city to do any type of work, that hold will be on the parcel, and they would have to, at that point in time, make sure that they repair or replace their sewer lateral.
Can you describe what a hold means?
A hold on a parcel would mean that the property owner, when they pull a permit, they will not be able to finalize their permits until that certain action or condition has been met.
Okay, so in other words, just so that I'm 100% clear here, a seller does an inspection, they discover a repair is needed, they sell the property anyway, but at least it's disclosed. The buyer says, oh, okay, a repair is required. There's a hold on the property. That hold could last for a long time until they happen to walk in the door with something else. They want to do a remodel. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Okay, so there's the implications to me, though, are from a buyer perspective, there's potentially a significant amount of time latitude in terms of when they execute it. There's a requirement, but there's time latitude. Then in terms of the repair costs, do we have sort of typical numbers on what those repair costs are? Is the $8,000 or $9,000 that Commissioner Robbins cited, is that typical?
The average cost for the replacement of a sewer lateral is at this current fiscal year, at this current time, is around, I believe, $8,600.
$8,600. Okay. So, within the scope of a property sale, that's, especially here with property values, it's a relatively minor amount, but, still significant. And our city program cost share, typically what percentage are we covering through that program?
50% of the
50%.
lowest bid up to a maximum of $5,000.
Okay. So in other words, the actual cost to the property owner is probably $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah, $4,300 in this example.
Okay. Okay. So I think that answers my questions, and I think we can open it up to public comment if we have any public comment.
Mr. Chair, Kyle Ariano, Assistant City Attorney, Legal Counsel for the Public Works Department. Just to refine a little bit on what Alonzo presented, the scope of the ordinance, my comments are sort of in the context of the questions about repair costs and timing. I would point out that the requirement in the proposed ordinance is one of an inspection and providing those inspection results to the city.
Right.
So it really feeds nicely into some of the data gathering issues that were addressed in the previous item. Gives the city a lot more intelligence on the state of private sewer laterals over time, really, because as you can see here, we are not requiring every property owner in the city to go out and get an inspection right now. It's only upon the occurrence of certain events. But the requirement proposed is just one of an inspection. We will prepare and staff will prepare an inspection form that a licensed plumber will be required to complete, and that information is cataloged by the city. Now, in terms of the timing of repairs, it really just depends, right? So if the repair trigger really lies in the building process, if they're going to turn around and make some improvements to the property beyond a certain threshold, then we will require the lateral to be repaired, but not that repair requirement doesn't occur when someone is selling their house, when someone is doing minor remodel work to their home. As you can see, the threshold is $90,000. So that's what we're proposing in this ordinance. It's one of inspection, it's one of data gathering, and one that really can help us inform the right size of the sewer lateral replacement program, the effectiveness of some of the other projects and improvements that we're making on the city-owned side of the collection system. And hopefully the result is it all sort of works together and reduces the I&I issues, and then also benefits property owners who are experiencing backups within their homes, things that we never see but are huge inconveniences to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comment?
No.
Okay, thank you. With that, bring it back to the commission for final discussion and disposition.
I think all of the events here and the conditions are reflective of what has come to the commission before and has gone through the council. And so I think this is a good time to move forward and recommend this to the council. Thank you.
I concur, and I appreciate Councilor's input. It does change my view a little bit that in other jurisdictions, I can cite Town of Truckee, County of Nevada as an example, you've got to you actually have to repair or replace if it's determined before you can transfer title, before you can close the sale, which I'm on the board of an HOA up there, and it's a nightmare. But that happens when your members find out. So if all we're doing here is requiring the inspection and testing, and that has to be done and lodged with the authorities prior, that's a pretty easy thing to accomplish. And it doesn't necessarily get the job done completely, but it also is less burdensome on to Commissioner St. Clair's concern. I think it's a little less burdensome, so I would support this as well. And I'll make a motion to that effect once everybody's had their discussion.
Commissioner St. Clair?
This is conflicting to me because I've been there. I've worked on sewer laterals. I've been in cities like Burlingame, certain towns where you had to have it done. Being a realtor, I've sold homes where it's been a nightmare because the costs skyrocketed in the old days because they would break up the curb and gutter, and some cities would have to replace it from the clean out, and the clean out could be next to the curb and gutter, and other cities wanted where you connect to the city pipe. The city pipe could be like on a street like Truesdale in the middle of the street, causing huge backup and delays and costs. So I've had on both sides of the coin. I don't really get the title transfer situation because it still becomes a lien hold position. It's still putting a hold on the property for someone to do something and kind of is strong arming them. And as I said, I've been there when I've seen sewer lateral guys do it because a person's already moved to another town and the house is for sale and they know, oh, you got to sell it. I can make the test work either way. It's not like the city is sending out a guy testing it and mandatoring staying the whole time. It's a contractor that would be having the test done and sets it up with the city to come and look or look at the result. And that's the differences in some cities. Because if you had a bunch of them, you would be paying a lot of money to have someone sit out there with the contractor all the time. It's the roofer getting on the roof and say, can you see me? And you say no, and he kicks a hole in your roof and says, hey, now I got Christmas money. I'm not trying to say I disagree with the whole process because it needs to be fixed some way. It's been proven to be good in some areas and proven to be bad in other areas. And until those get fixed, I'm not really comfortable with it. That's it. Thank you.
My feeling on this is having been on both sides of real estate transactions, as a buyer, right, you don't want surprises after the fact, right? You don't want to walk into a property and discover, the foundation was bad, or there's mold or asbestos or something that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars that you didn't know walking in. And if there's an inspection, and you have that inspection report, then you have legal cover and recourse if that was in fact incorrect. So I'm quite sympathetic to this on those grounds. So anyway, I think we can move to a motion if we have a commissioner willing to make it.
Motion to make the proposed revisions to the private sewer lateral ordinance
As proposed.
as proposed.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, just modify it slightly. I think we're supposed to recommend that those revisions go to the council. I wish we could make the call, but we don't. And on that basis, I would second Jackie's motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. I think you have your direction and next steps. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll move next to the clean water plan, please.
Evening, Chair Reyes and Commission. My name is Derek Keegan. I'm the Program Manager for the Clean Water Program. I'll be providing an update to the program and having Azalea Mitch, my Deputy Director of Public Works, also supporting and providing information on some of the slides. And tonight I'll be providing a background of the Clean Water Program. I think this is actually the first time that we are presenting to this specific commission. The last time was either at the Sustainability Commission or Public Works Commission. So the other item that we'll be talking about are the two largest projects, which are the underground flow equalization system along with the wastewater treatment plant upgrade and expansion, and how those projects really align with the city's climate action plan. And before we dive into this a little bit more, as Azalea mentioned in the last agenda item, the program isn't just these two large programs, large projects. It's actually doing a lot of infiltration and inflow reduction through our annual rehab programs as well. So it's not just increasing capacity, it's limiting the amount of inflow and infiltration. So this image here is the orange boundary is our service area boundary. So we provide service to approximately 170,000 customers within the city of San Mateo, but also Foster City, Hillsborough, or actually the southern portion of Hillsborough, and portions of the county. And CSCSD is Crystal Springs County Sanitation District, which is managed by the county as well. And in the yellow box there in the top middle is a wastewater treatment plant location, and the UFES, which is the Underground Flow Equalization System project, is at the event center. And every wastewater system, really the goal of it is to collect and convey the wastewater that it collects from all the residential properties, all the commercial businesses, send it to the wastewater treatment plant for it to be treated, and eventually, after treatment, discharge it to the closest water body, in this case, the San Francisco Bay. And as you can see there, the gradient from yellowish brown to nice, clean blue. That's the goal. However, the City of San Mateo, along with Crystal Springs County Sanitation District, the County of San Mateo, as well as the Town of Hillsborough, we faced a cease and desist order that was issued to us in 2009 by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And the graphics, or a few graphics here, let's focus in on the one on the left first. This is a map of San Mateo, and all those blue dots there are hydraulically modeled and actual historical sanitary sewer overflow locations. And I have that area circled in that orange oval there. That really highlights the Delaware corridor. That's where primarily a lot of the sanitary sewer overflows in our system occur. That's where it flattens out a little bit in our system. All the wastewater from the hills starts to hit capacity in that area. And eventually what happens is what is shown in the video there. This occurs during peak wet weather conditions. The rain infiltrates into the ground. It dilutes the raw sewage in the wastewater system, and eventually it exceeds the capacity of the system, and it overflows onto the street, into our storm drain system, and eventually impacts our creeks, our lagoons, our beaches. We've had to close our beaches because of the contamination levels in the water. And because of this, we are addressing the cease and desist order issued by the Water Board, along with the discharge permit that requires us to not blend at the wastewater treatment plant. So the Clean Water Program, because of the cease and desist order, was established, and the goals of the Clean Water Program are in front of you right here. First and foremost, we want to replace aging infrastructure and facilities in both our collection system and wastewater treatment plant. Second is to build wet weather sewer system capacity assurance to prevent overflows. And under that, in the sub-bullet, the UFES, the Underground Flow Equalization System, is one of the largest components to increase capacity by providing storage during wet weather flows and managing flows being sent to the wastewater treatment plant. By completing the Clean Water Program, we meet current and future regulatory requirements, and ultimately it's to prevent sanitary sewer overflows, no blending at the wastewater treatment plant, and then nutrient removal into the San Francisco Bay. Ultimately, one of the other goals is to align with the City of San Mateo and Foster City sustainability goals to protect the Bay and our community for a sustainable future. Now, diving into the two largest projects. This is the underground flow equalization system project. We are going to be locating it in the event center, or at the corner of the event center property. And the city council approved the special use permit and the environmental impact report last month, actually, for this project. And we plan to go out to bid early next year and start construction by late spring, early summer next year. It is a 5.3 million gallon underground structure located there. In the image, it's going to be buried underground, and after the project is complete, the event center can reuse their property in the same fashion that they have there with vehicle storage. And part of the project is for a diversion sewer along with force mains, taking flows off of that Delaware trunk line where a lot of the sanitary sewer overflows and capacity limitations occur, and transferring that into the underground structure. So I have a few images here. I'm going to go through these fast, but this is really the phases of construction. First, we'll clear the site and prep it. Next, we'll install the shoring. This is watertight shoring to help with some of the settlement concerns that the community had. And next is excavation after the shoring is in place. Then we're going to be drilling some piles for the foundation. Lastly, placing a ton of concrete for the structure. And after all said and done, we'll repave and restore the surface and hand it back to the event center for use, for their use. And this is just another aerial here. It's a little color coordinated. First and foremost, number one is the diversion structure. It's going to be located at the southern, south of the Delaware-Saratoga intersection. And really it's a weir structure that once the pipeline, trunk line along Delaware is exceeding a certain capacity or a certain limit, it will overflow into this, over the weir and flow into the diversion sewers that would then convey that exceeded capacity to the underground structure. It would hold within the underground structure for up to 24 hours and then get pumped through the force mains back into the system when the wastewater treatment plant is ready to collect it and treat it. I wanted to highlight there that there is continuous odor control even when it's not in use during normal operations, when nothing is going in or out of it. And this is just a schedule identifying all the different phases, but ultimately majority of construction is going to occur over 25 months, and then the final site finishing over the last year. The other thing at the very bottom there, I wanted to highlight that monitoring will occur throughout all phases of construction. This is what the site looks like now. You could see over the slatted chain link fence some of the top of the vehicles that the event center stores there. And this is the finished render. Basically, we will be constructing a concrete masonry unit wall along with adding some screen fencing on the side there. And passing it on to Azalea Mitch.
Can you, no, go back? Yeah. So I'll just tell you next. So the existing wastewater treatment plant, as you may know, is located off Detroit Avenue near 3rd. The upgrade will happen in the adjacent parcel, and the city was fortunate enough to own that parcel. This will allow us to build the upgrade and expand while the existing facility remains operational. I know there's a lot on this slide, but I thought it would be interesting to walk you through the process. The design focuses on 2 modes of operation. The dry weather mode, We typically see 10 million gallons of flow a day. That flow will get screened, and that means that any debris and sand will first get removed, followed by primary sedimentation. That just means that anything that settles drops to the bottom and the solids get removed. And then the fun starts, which is the biological nutrient removal. That's where the biology really breaks down the nutrients found in wastewater. The water will then be filtered and chlorinated to kill the bugs, dechlorinated because chlorine is bad for the environment, and then discharged to San Francisco Bay. So the design will allow us also to be able to recycle flow in the future. So while we don't really have demand right now, we will be set up to meet that demand years to come. In wet weather, and this gets back to the I&I issues that we do have, the 10 MGD increases to 78. When this happens, we'll be able to process as much as we can through the main process, and it will go through biological removal, but some of that flow will get stored and then treated under the wet weather mode, and that will involve some clarification and biological treatment. That flow will blend and then get chlorinated and dechlorinated and discharged to the bay. One of the key things, really key focuses of this design is that biological nutrient removal. And the reason why this is important is because we'll be able to remove nitrogen. Next. And we'll be able to remove around 60% of the nitrogen that currently enters the system. Now, why is that important? As you may know, right, we need nitrogen and phosphorus. They're essential for the biological functions of our community, of us. And we've relied on the bay to really handle the nutrients that we load into it. San Francisco Bay is one of the most nutrient-rich estuarine bodies in the world, and it's been pretty resilient. However, we're beginning to see that it's not as resilient as we thought it was, and the scientific community is definitely focusing on ways for us to manage nutrients. Because of the excess, we are observing changes in the biota, in the aquatic life. We are seeing algae blooms, and we are studying to see if we actually have conditions where that oxygen in the water drops, which is pretty bad for fish. So the community, the wastewater community, is really important. We serve a population of 7 million residents to the Bay Area. And those 37 plants that discharge into the Bay treat around 450 million gallons a day. So that's a lot of water. And part of that discharge carries that nitrogen and phosphorus. And just in the wastewater, with the wastewater treatment plants alone, the Bay receives about 2/3 of the nutrients. So that's a significant amount. The important thing about our clean water project is that we will be able to remove 60% of that nitrogen that we are seeing, and we are an early actor, meaning out of the 37 plants that discharge, we're actually one of the few that are getting ahead of the game and really addressing the issues that we're bound to have in the future. If you have driven by the site, we have started the project. This was awarded back in July. We've got fencing up. The first phase will involve excavation and the demolition of a few structures within the existing facility. Phase 2, we will award that next year, and that will involve the driving of over 1,800 piles for the foundation. And then phase 3, which we anticipate awarding next year as well, and this is where we're currently working on finalizing the design, will involve building the facility itself, all the concrete work, the mechanical work, the electrical, and commissioning the facility. We anticipate that the project will be completed in 2024. These are a few of the renderings. The top rendering is the view from the headworks. That's the beginning of the process. And as you can see, everything will be screened, so you really won't be able to see much from the outside. The bottom shows the administration building, and then, and then the digesters in the back, which those are currently part of the existing facility. And then this is a rendering of the path in between. We will have interpretive signs that will talk about the process itself and also the overall wastewater collection system. And with that, I'll pass it on to Derek.
Thank you, Zelia. This is really the last slide, and the city has a climate action plan, and the wastewater treatment plant project really aligns with that. I've identified some of the measures to help align with that climate action plan's goal to reduce greenhouse gas reductions. And the 5 that are in the climate action plan right now are RE7, which is to provide advanced and emerging renewable energy systems, along with ME1, energy efficiency for new city buildings. And the image to the right there is a LEED certification. The admin building is going to be a silver LEED certified facility. Some of the other climate action plan measures are to increase bicycle mode sharing. In the previous image, you may have seen one of the people in there riding a bicycle. We're going to have bicycle racks there and providing a safer path, because right now a lot of pedestrians walk on the street. We will be using water efficient landscaping and developing also new sources of non-potable water. In terms, going back to RE7, the admin building will have solar panels along with utilize biogas produced from our digesters to provide energy savings of up to 50%. It's an energy offset of 50% for our admin building. And then WW3 there develop new sources of non-potable water. At the end of the treatment process, the effluent will be high quality, and it will meet Title 22 recyclable water standards for potential recycle uses in the future. And that concludes our presentation.
Great, thank you. Moving to commissioner questions.
Just thank you again. I've been here for so long that we've had so many discussions about this. It just seems to be running perfect, and it's what needed, and it's going to save us from any penalties and get into the future where we have to be, at least. That's the biggest thing going.
Thank you also. This is so exciting, and I'll share a quick personal story that the reason why I got interested in environmental science was because my high school teacher was explaining how our local wastewater treatment plant worked. So it's really great to see this right in our backyards here, and to see that it's also talking to the climate action plan and integrating with that. I'm wondering if I saw one of the measures also was water efficient landscaping as well, so I'm wondering how the plan will interact with the green infrastructure plan as well, if at all.
We could look into that, but right now the goal is to have at least 80% of the plants used and landscaping used to be native plants, drought resistant, and stuff like.
If I can add to that. So the site will be compliant with the stormwater permit, so it will incorporate some of those features, and it's aligned with the Green Infrastructure Master Plan, although that focuses more on work in the public right-of-way, but it's basically the same concept will be applied on site.
Great, thank you. Also, Azalea, in your presentation, there was a small bullet around 60% of nitrogen removal in dry weather, and I'm just wondering how that changes in wet weather and what you can speak to a little bit around that.
Sure, absolutely. So the annual average will range between 50 to 60% year-round. However, the regulations are currently focusing just on the summer load. because that's when the bay is most vulnerable. So the loading during the summer, given the conditions, the temperature can lead to algae blooms. So the focus is just on that summer, but the 60% will be between 50 and 60 will be annual.
Great. Thank you. Last question is around future changes in precipitation patterns. And I know that data is coming out soon and now. I'm wondering how that is being incorporated into the Clean Water Program.
Sure, if you go back to the service area, Derek. And this gets back to the, what do we anticipate in the future, right? And there are a few things that we are looking at. The operation of the system will become a little bit more sophisticated. The approach it's designed around real-time operation. We'll be able to gauge when the storms are coming, their intensity, to figure out when to store flow so that we can maximize the flow that we can treat, but also prevent the sanitary sewer overflows. We don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty, but the more that we can do in terms of focusing on the collection system and the way that we operate the plant will help the community. So I think we'll just have the ability to be a little bit more flexible with strategy, and the operators will have a lot to think about. The intensity of the storms, the duration, is it time to empty the UFIS, right? Are we maximizing flow? We've had a number of operational strategy meetings, and we will continue to have them for the next few years, but a lot of thought is going into that.
Great. Thank you so much.
No questions. Thank you.
I'm also super excited about this project. I do have several questions. I live in Bay Meadows, as you are well aware. This has been a topic of substantial discussion in the neighborhood. Can you itemize for me the major concerns that have been voiced by the neighborhood association and the responses that have been taken to address those issues?
Yeah. So the communities of both Bay Meadows and Fiesta Gardens, when we presented to the Planning Commission of the original draft environmental impact report, it didn't have as much detail in terms of the construction methods that we would have liked to have, and now that we've gone through that process, we refined and detailed out some of those items. Some of the main concerns were noise, mainly from pile driving, and we've adjusted those by using micro piles, which are drilled in at a much quieter decibel level. The other items were settlement, and really that is tied to groundwater levels. And the way that we are addressing that is by having watertight shoring system, and instead of having dewatering wells outside of the shoring system, we're dewatering from within the shoring system. That prevents drawdowns outside beyond 10, 15 feet of the shoring system. So that prevents groundwater drawdown closer to the residents or away from the residents, and also allows us to control and monitor groundwater levels. In addition, in regards to settlement, we are in the process of installing groundwater monitoring wells throughout the neighborhood. Along with during construction, we're going to be having vibration monitors and noise monitors throughout the site. One of the other items of concern was dust. And so we have typical best management practices that we're requiring the contractor to comply with, where we will have dust monitors handheld by inspectors, along with a camera to help identify if there's actual fugitive dust going over our construction fencing. Mm-hmm. I think I captured most of it.
You did.
And the other big item is traffic concerns. Of course, it requires a lot of trucks to move the excavated soil in and out of there, and also to bring in concrete. So one of the main concerns there was a lot of truck traffic and construction traffic being routed along Saratoga. And so the way that we met their concerns was in coordination with the event center and the county. We are in the process of obtaining an easement with the county that will allow us to route traffic instead of on Saratoga, but now on Delaware, and to route traffic through the event center along their southern edge there. Let me actually pull it up to show you where that is. So originally the plan was to send traffic along Saratoga into the site and out of the site and down Saratoga towards Hillsdale. Now what the plan is, for majority of the time, we will be routing traffic up and down Delaware and creating a temporary access driveway for construction to be routed directly to the site, directly avoiding Saratoga. During times when the event center has large events, such as the county fair, or when they have clients such as Facebook conducting their fair, or any other large events, we will be vacating that routing easement within their property and potentially even stopping all activity since the county, along with the event center, are partners, and we want to make sure that we don't impact their operations and revenue streams.
Okay, great. I appreciate all that work to address those concerns in the neighborhood. A couple other questions since you've got this map up. The pipes that are shown here in the blue and the green, are those going to be new pipes that are going to be laid?
The blue line, divergent sewer lines, those are going to be new. The green line, we are actually going to be lining an existing pipe and turning into a force main. There is a portion, let me turn my laser pointer on here. In this area of the green forest main, we will be doing horizontal directional drilling under the creek, which runs along here, if you could see. And so we have to get under that concrete channel, and we will be utilizing trenchless technologies for that.
And so, so that means that we'll be digging up the roads to lay those pipes. And can you speak to the time frames? How long will the streets be disrupted with that work? Right. The goal is to only impact one street at a time. So if we're on Delaware, we're not going to be addressing Saratoga, and that's the idea behind having here the staggered sewer construction. But ultimately, all in all, it's going to take 12 to 15 months to do all the pipelines there. I do want to indicate that when we are on this on the Saratoga Drive site, we will have to close that during construction. During construction hours.
You had at a previous meeting, you had shown us the trenches and all the pictures showing all that, and had all the time limits and everything all set up, and it was pretty, you guys really did go through every detail. You were really strong about that, and that was one of the biggest things I liked.
So, and just so that I'm clear, it's going to be closed in both directions? Westbound traffic on the other side, right now, the plan is to maintain access on that westbound route. It's just the eastbound, because the sewer lines are going to be on that eastbound side, on the southern side. Now, it's 2 lanes on the westbound side. Couldn't those lanes be used to allow travel in both directions? The team considered that, and for both constructability and safety, the proposed approach was to close both lanes, mainly because the divergent sewer size there is a 36-inch, and along with that, we'll have to excavate beyond that 36-inch
and then have room for construction equipment to operate around the trench. And
So,
yeah.
in other words, for the neighborhood traffic, it would be, while Saratoga is closed in that direction, then it would be through Delaware would be the access to the neighborhood for folks coming down from Delaware, for example.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Great. Turning to the wastewater treatment plant, a reference was made to use of biogas in the administration building, which is great. Will that consume the entirety of the natural gas, the biogas, or will there be excess biogas? And if so, what will we be doing with the excess biogas?
So we currently have a compressed natural gas facility that in that gas, the biogas is used to fuel our fleet. This was the first year, right, that we purchased CNG vehicles. So we have been slowly retiring some of the vehicles and going to CNG. So the plant will provide the fuel for our fleet and also half of the energy use in the administration building. It will also it currently is used to heat some of the process within the plant, but most of the gas is flared, so it is not used.
So a couple questions there. Did I understand that the natural gas use in the administration, will that be entirely served by the biogas, or will we also have piped in natural gas?
I believe it will have both for backup, but it will primarily be fueled by the biogas.
Okay. Has there been consideration about repurposing that biogas for other energy generation?
Yes, we do have an evaluation that was done a few years ago that looked at cogeneration, and so that will be part of our future assessment.
And one of my concerns here is that, based on prior reports, CNG vehicles are no longer popular, and they're hard to find, and it's probably, I would suspect, just based on past comments, I understand it to be not that viable from a long-term perspective. And obviously, if we're flaring it, that's not so great. Can you comment more on, how we can address that issue?
Yeah, as Azalea alluded to, we did have a study done on that 2 or 3 years ago, basically with the solids process and what we could do with that process. With the financial impact to our ratepayers on what we're already doing, we've decided kind of put that in abeyance for right now, but it is something we could consider in the future. You are correct as far as the CNG vehicles. We've had some internal discussions about that already, and whether we go to purchase, once the lifespan of the current vehicles is up, whether we continue to purchase more or not, we may not, because of the challenges with that technology, and it's not that popular. We've actually had some trouble getting those vehicles, but at this point in time, we just didn't feel it would be prudent for our ratepayers to add more cost to the program, at this time, but would look towards that in the future.
So I would note that this might be an area, depending on the volumes that are involved, that Peninsula Clean Energy might be interested in having a conversation, because if the volumes are large, then the energy generation potential could be sizable, and then that could be quite interesting to Peninsula Clean Energy as a generation source, and so there might be alternate funding opportunities for getting that done.
Okay. The other thing that I would note is we have had some preliminary conversations with the SBWMA, the trash hauler. Recology is looking at converting their vehicles to CNG, and so there may be an opportunity to engage them as well in the use of the fuel.
Great. And so this, I would hope would be treated as a high priority. I would certainly be interested in hearing more in terms of what the volumes are that are being produced. Is that something that might be made available?
Absolutely. We do have that. We can provide that.
Great, thank you. Oh yes, the plans for water reuse. It's my understanding from past reports that this is a topic of ongoing investigation. Can we get an update on where those conversations are?
Absolutely. So we are, well, currently, as you saw, we're under, the design will allow us to be able to produce Title 22 water. In terms of supplying, we have partnered with the San Francisco PUC, Public Utilities Commission, with Silicon Valley Clean Water, Cal Water, and Redwood City on a study that looks at reservoir water augmentation. And what that idea focuses on is being able to take the wastewater from San Mateo and from SVCW, treating it to the point that it becomes potable, and supplying Crystal Springs. So supplying that Hetchy. We just finished the second phase of that study, and we're looking at the scope for the next steps, the future study. So right now, we're definitely in the very preliminary scoping phase in terms of what this project would look like and what it would entail. But that is a partnership that we do currently have with those parties.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say very preliminary scoping, can you elaborate on what that means? And what sort of time frame do we think we might have a sense of what's going to actually happen?
Well, great question, because we were talking about that time frame last Tuesday. We are looking at year 2040. Mm-hmm. And the discussion involved, right? I'm like, Brad's like, he won't be here. So it's sort of looking at that horizon, the 2040 horizon, and then figuring out what it will take. The organizational framework is very complex. Right? We're not a water purveyor, but we own this wastewater. There are many agencies involved. There's the public outreach and public perception component. So it's complicated, but the good thing is that we do have the framework. The effort just a few months ago focused on that organizational framework. Who should be the leader? Who should be leading this effort? What does that look like, and what would it take to actually create, those agreements? There's the funding, the cost for building a potable an advanced treatment facility, and the piping associated with that, and then the environmental clearance. So it's rather complex.
Yes,
but
I can only imagine how complicated. I just want to note that this is very likely in our future and incredibly important. Droughts are going to be, the new abnormal that we're going to have to face, and so these sources are going to become very important. Those are all of the questions I have, and maybe we can move to public comment if we have any.
No, I don't have any.
Someone has to speak tonight. I wrote 3 books about wastewater, and they're only purchased by people who are trying to avoid this. This is an approach we call big pipe. And I'm not speaking against it. It's what's appropriate for now. It's the right thing for the wrong reasons, or the wrong place for the right reasons. But there's some opportunities that I want our city to, some approaches our city really needs to look at going forward. It's considered best practice. I saw Azalea at the water reuse local meeting, and so I know she knows about them. Our last presentation was about picking off flows from the treatment plant. But we should look at other ways to do that, and it can intersect with water conservation. So we're spending up to $9,000 to repair a lateral. It would probably cost about $3,000 if we put a bunch of gray water systems in. And that would also reduce our demand on our water supply. But we should be looking at ways to pick these flows off this treatment plant because it's going to offer a lot of benefits. So we're going to reduce the velocity in the pipes. Let's say we put gray water systems in all of our public buildings. Certainly every school should have one. We're going to actually reduce the velocity in pipes. That's going to reduce II where we can't control it. It's also going to reduce, demand on our water supply. And more, we should look at what other communities are doing and try to keep these flows on site. I'm just going to look at my notes. This treatment plant is going to denitrify, and I don't know if you know about that process. It uses a lot of energy. And I moved here from Massachusetts, where all the treatment plants on Bays were switching to denitrification, but seeing huge energy bills. Palo Alto has a form of denitrification. It's the biggest energy bill in the city. And basically what we're doing, wastewater treatment essentially is one way to look at wastewater, and I want to tell you this because a lot of things will be clear going forward. Essentially, a lot of clean water and some brown stuff, which has a lot of carbon in it and a potential pathogen element that's flushed through toilets, some yellow stuff, which is actually most of the nitrogen we're going to try to get out of this treatment plant. It was actually in urine stream in a domestic wastewater, since we don't really have any animal operations or food industry. And then we also have a lot of heat going in there. If we can pick some of those flows off, we're going to have more capacity, less treatment costs, potentially less II. We'll have reduced water demand. And again, more and more I'd look at not just gray water systems, but on-site full wastewater treatment systems that actually does the treatment on site, and that also is going to take some of the brown and yellow out of there, less carbon load, less bacteria load, less nitrogen. When we reduce nitrogen, we actually can create more biogas because we have a better carbon to nitrogen ratio. So, we had Cal Water recently refuse to put a gray water system in, which is kind of surreal. Even our consultant for this plant was surprised to hear this story. We have gray water systems noted in the CAP. Let's make sure we enforce that. I mean, this is, go to San Francisco, you see the Salesforce building. That building has its own wastewater treatment plant. They're kind of doing it the cheating way. The brown stuff that they'll settle out will go to the SFPUCs.
And I'm sorry to cut in. We'll need to bring this to close.
So what I'm asking our city to do is look for ways to pick off these flows, do some on-site treatment, and certainly in our public buildings. And we'll be catching up to other places. We like to think we play fast and loose in California ahead of the rest of the country, but not so much in some areas. And here there's a very good cost benefit on taking this approach. Thanks.
Great, thank you, point well taken. All right, with that, bring it back to the commission for any final comments before we close.
The only thing I'd say is that I've seen a lot of communication around this, especially in social media, and so just keep doing the thing. And I know that communication about public works is a really big priority, and I've seen that in the city's communication. So, thank you.
Thank you. I did want to say a couple of things. One of the other things we're doing for sustainability is actually for our ratepayers, where we're getting funding from the federal government, low interest funding, and also from the state revolving loan fund as well. So we're trying to do everything we can to lessen the impact on the ratepayers and And lastly, I'll just say that I like this image that's on the screen right now. I'm really liking that image. And one of the things we termed this facility at the beginning when we started this process is kind of San Mateo's gem of the Bay, because it's really not going to look like a wastewater facility from the outside. It's going to be something we can all be proud of.
That's great. Thank you very much for this report. I'm realizing, Brad, I neglected to ask a couple questions on the lateral item that Commissioner Ruinski had raised. If I may add in a couple quick questions that hopefully we can address. On the 0.68 FTE for the sewer lateral ordinance, would that FTE also manage the cost-sharing program as well?
No, that's actually separate. So this is an additional FTE hours that we don't currently have. We actually, Alonzo is actually the person that's managing the sewer lateral cost-sharing program.
Okay.
Right now.
And the 426 laterals to be replaced, that's not in addition, that would be in addition to the cost-sharing program?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And when would we start to see those? Would that be in the next fiscal year that we would start to see those numbers come in when the ordinance goes into place?
Yeah, I mean, we anticipate the ordinance will be in place the next fiscal year, so we're hopeful we can see that level of return, but it just all depends on, home sales, the issues that are surrounding the laterals, and, building permits as well. So it's kind of historical, so we anticipate seeing that right away, but it's going to vary year by year.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those were all the questions. Thank you for bearing with me. And with that, we'll move to reports and announcements.
So I have a, let's see, next meeting is December 11th. And the Climate Action Plan update will be back before you. We will have, as has been requested, a presentation by Bosca and Cal Water on the water supply and conservation efforts. Since we are not the water purveyor, those two entities work together here. And then the Bicycle Master Plan update as well. We'll be bringing that back to you. I had a couple of requests from Commissioner Lewinsky last time, but I wanted to pull the group here as whether you would like to have these items added to our to be scheduled items. One of them would be, let me just do one at a time, and if I can get concurrence or thumbs up, thumbs down, or whatever you want to give me. Presentation by the South Bay Waste Management Association, and they're the ones that oversee our trash hauling contract and recycling efforts and so forth. So if you're all, let me know if people concur with that one.
If I may, a presentation about just in general, or is there anything specific that was requested?
No, she just wanted a presentation from them, probably to update where they're at with recycling and just the various programs that they do there.
If I may comment, I would speculate that the recycling issue would be the top concern, given that the issue with China no longer taking a lot of the recycling materials, and so that would probably be the focus.
And again, I realize she's not here right now, so if it's better for me to wait and ask you when she's here, so she could actually provide you a little more information than what she's thinking, I can do that too. Because I mean, we've got a full slate for a couple of months already anyway, so we're not going to be able to probably get these things together. So if you'd rather I wait till December when she's here to speak to those, I'm okay with that too.
I'm happy to defer to Commissioner opinions on this.
Yeah, I would defer, because I can make a pro or con on most of these. I'd like to hear why she thinks it's timely. It might be of interest, but it might not be a high priority in my opinion.
Yeah,
so
okay,
let her
thank
make
you.
her case.
Let's do it that way then. Thank you.
Okay. Any other items?
Given that we do have two large items on the agenda for our December meeting, I'm wondering if, and since the Cal Water update is an informational item, I'm wondering if we can kick it to early 2020 if possible, probably the January meeting.
I have no objection.
Objection.
I would imagine the cap is going to consume most of the discussion, so I'm fine with that.
There was some concern regarding staff on this issue too, so I appreciate that. We were just mindful of your interest to have that item brought forward, so we'll move that into next year at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements or agenda requests?
Yeah, I got one thing. We got a new city council member last night that was voted in, Miss Lee, and so she's already a commissioner and then now. So I'd like to say that, is there a way that we can get something that would say, thank you, welcome aboard from Public Works Sustainability Commission?
Sure, what do you have in mind?
Just a card. I don't know if the city has a card that can stamp it saying that we as a commission just want to say congratulations and thank you and welcome.
Sure, I'll make that happen.
Thank you.
If you're all in favor of that, so.
Yes.
I don't see any vigorous opposition to the idea.
I'm a fan of Amarants. I'm not a big fan of us getting too political, but I think something that just says congratulations on the appointment would be fine.
Yes, welcome aboard.
Got it.
All right. Okay.
Another update is that Saturday is the general plan workshop for those who are interested. A lot touches on sustainability and infrastructure. It's Saturday, November 16th. Is Saturday from 10 to 11:45 a.m. at the Martin Luther King Community Center. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Aye.
Okay,
Or
all those in
second.
favor? Aye. Thank you very much.